If you're seeing this, it means the episode found you too. I didn't want to tell anyone, honestly. I hoped I could pretend it never happened. But ignoring it only made things worse. And before you listen any further, you need to understand something very clearly. This isn't just a story. It's a warning. Most people who come across lost media online expect grainy screenshots, half-remembered rumors, the usual internet folklore. I used to be one of them. I grew up with this cartoon, and like everyone else my age, I felt a weird kind of comfort every time I rewatched it. The bright colors, the goofy voices, the harmless plot lines, they were part of my childhood. But whatever I found wasn't harmless, and it definitely wasn't part of anything that should have existed. I wish I could tell you I stumbled onto the episode accidentally, but the truth is, it felt like it was waiting for me. Only a handful of people in the world have ever watched it, at least, the ones who talked about it before their posts vanished. None of them sounded okay. Some rambled, some contradicted themselves, and one guy's entire account went dark after he uploaded a single frozen frame. I used to think it was all an elaborate prank. I don't think that anymore. The strange part is that the file spreads on its own. I'm not exaggerating. It appeared on my desktop twice after I deleted it. And tonight, if you notice flickering lights or whispers near your speakers, don't panic. At least not yet. It starts small. I know how this sounds. You're probably rolling your eyes, thinking this is another creepypasta with a cursed cartoon. I wish you were right. But if you're hearing my voice right now, you're already closer to it than you should be. To understand how this started, I need to go back to the beginning, before the episode found me. Because once you know what I saw, once you hear how the episode changed, you'll realize something terrifying. Watching it wasn't the mistake. Surviving it was for those like us. I've always had this habit of drifting back to old shows whenever life starts feeling a little too heavy. It's stupid, I guess. Most people my age cope with stress by taking weekend trips or doom-scrolling social media. Me, I retreat into nostalgia like it's a shelter I keep forgetting is made of cardboard. That particular week, work had drained me to the point where even sleep felt like another chore I was too tired to complete. So I found myself wandering the dusty corners of the internet, the ones untouched by algorithm updates and modern web design, chasing the comfort of the shows that used to air before school. There was one cartoon I loved more than the rest. It wasn't anything special on the surface, just cheerful music, jittery animation, and characters who lived in a world so soft and unthreatening it almost felt medicinal. Back then, it was background noise for breakfast cereal and half-awake mornings. I never imagined it would become the center of something so unsettling. Thinking about it still feels wrong, like remembering a warm blanket that someone later drenched in gasoline. I ended up on a forgotten forum I hadn't visited in years, one of those sites with dead links and usernames that look like they were typed in a hurry on a school computer. Most of the posts were harmless nostalgia threads and lost media hunts. People reminiscing about pilots that never aired or commercials they barely remembered. It should have been comforting. It should have felt safe. Then I saw it, a buried thread titled simply, "Found this, is it real?" Inside was a single screenshot, blurry, off-color, wrong. I recognized the character immediately, but the expression wasn't anything that belonged in the show. Wide eyes, too wide. The smile stretched like someone pulled it from the edges. It didn't feel edited, though. It felt captured, as if it had been taken from a moment never meant to be paused. The comments were the usual mix of sarcasm and dismissal. Nice try. Terrible Photoshop. Creepypasta bait. Someone even joked the uploader should learn how to fake glitches better. But buried between the jokes was one reply I couldn't stop staring at. People said only 3 frames from that episode ever survived. It shouldn't have grabbed me the way it did. I told myself it was curiosity, that old familiar itch every lost media hunter gets when something doesn't fit neatly into the box of hoaxes and fandom myths. But something deeper tugged at me, something I still can't name. A few minutes later, the original post disappeared, just gone, like it had never existed. But right before it vanished, my cursor hovered over the attached file. I don't remember deciding. I don't remember thinking. My finger just clicked. And even though every instinct in me whispered that nostalgia shouldn't feel dangerous, I downloaded the file anyway. The file hit my downloads folder like a ghost in the system, silent, unannounced, almost ashamed of its existence. I stared at it for a good 30 seconds, hovering over the name. Smile always finalsut true. The timestamp was from 2004. That alone should have been impossible. I hadn't seen a legitimate episode of that show in over a decade, let alone a file this precise and wrong. The metadata was a mess, corrupted, half-empty. Something about the encoding screamed amateurish, yet oddly professional at the same time. No uploader, no source, just a blinking cursor hovering over the file like it was daring me to double-click. I laughed a little nervously. Sure, it's probably a virus, I muttered to myself, tossing off the thought like it was nothing. Curiosity is a disease, right? My hand didn't hesitate. I double-clicked. The folder opened to reveal a single video file sitting there innocuously. I clicked it, and for the first 30 seconds it was normal, exactly as I remembered. The opening jingle, the bright colors, the familiar character voices that used to lull me through Saturday mornings. The animation jittered slightly, like old VHS tape, but nothing alarming, at least, not at first. Then the subtle things started. Tiny misalignments in the background, repeating loops that didn't match. A character's eyelid would twitch at an unnatural speed as if someone had skipped frames manually. The audio glitched in ways I couldn't fully place, a static buzz under a laugh, a whisper beneath the cheerful music. My eyes darted back and forth, convinced my brain was overreacting. I even joked aloud, great, I've got a haunted episode and possibly a virus. Good weekend. But the laughter died in my throat when I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. At first I thought it was just bad encoding until the characters started looking at me. Not at the camera, not at the audience, at me. My living room, the couch, the angle of my head. One character, a small, cheerful rabbit I used to adore, paused mid-step and blinked slowly, tilting its head in a way that didn't belong. I swear. I could feel it tracking me. And then I noticed something even more specific. A single frame, one almost imperceptible flash between scenes, revealed a small shadow in the corner of my own room. I froze, my finger hovering over the mouse. This was the kind of thing you only notice if you freeze at exactly the right frame. Nobody else had reported it. Nobody else could have. And somehow, that made it worse. The episode continued, but the anomalies escalated. The characters started mouthing words I didn't remember, not dialogue from any script, not anything in the show's ridiculous canon. Subtle phrases at first, half-sentences whispered under background noise, then full words, sentences that felt directed at me. They called out my name in syllables that matched the cadence of the original voice actors perfectly, but the tone, it was wrong. Almost pleading, almost mocking. The jarring contrast between the cheerful animation and the underlying dread made my stomach twist. I tried to rationalize it, of course. It's a corrupted file. My brain is filling in the gaps. I muttered the cliché to myself like a shield. But the more I watched, the less comforting that idea became. The scenery in the background warped subtly. A tree that should have been stationary seemed to sway as if alive. A toy on the shelf, one I hadn't seen in years, appeared briefly before vanishing. I reached to pause the video, but the player ignored me. The cursor wouldn't move, keys were dead, even Alt-Tab felt like a joke. I leaned closer, squinting, and that's when I realized. The characters were not just mouthing words. They were forming sentences that weren't in any script I knew, sentences that implied they could see me, that they knew the choices I'd made to get here. I swallowed hard and muttered, well, I guess this is happening. And that's when I noticed the shadows behind them weren't from the animation. They were from the corner of my room, perfectly timed with every blink, every flicker, as if the episode had adapted itself to me. The file wasn't just wrong, it was alive, and it had found me. It started subtly at first. The cheerful background music played on, the colors bright and familiar, but something was off. The characters didn't just move through their world, they moved around me. Or at least that's what my mind wanted to tell me. The rabbit from before appeared in the corner of the screen, paused mid-hop and looked straight at me. Not at the camera like a regular cartoon, but at me. My apartment. The couch I sat on. My coffee cup. It was impossible, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't imagining it. Then the whispers started, soft, barely audible under the laugh track. At first I thought it was my own imagination, the nervous brain trying to make sense of nonsense. But leaning closer to the screen, tilting my ear, I heard them clearly. Words fractured and distorted, scraping along the edge of comprehension. "Stop watching, it sees you," I froze, hand hovering over the mouse. My heart was hammering. "It's just audio distortion," I muttered. "It has to be." But it was. The more I watched, the more the background itself began to shift. Trees warped into shapes that resembled my childhood bedroom. A desk that only existed in memory appeared behind one of the animated walls, a shelf full of toys I hadn't touched in years. Even the lighting mimicked the way sunlight fell across my living room in the late afternoon. It was uncanny. Nostalgia that should have been comforting twisted into something claustrophobic, almost accusatory. The juxtaposition of the happy characters and the creeping familiarity of my own life made my skin crawl. And then came the voices. Not the cheerful voice actors, not even the distorted whispers from before, something else. A second voice, low and rasping, almost pleading. I remembered reading online that some viewers had claimed they heard a hidden second voice in the lost episode. I had laughed at it. I didn't believe them. But now, leaning so close my nose nearly touched the screen, I could hear it clearly. "Please, help, don't stop me." I stumbled back in my chair, gripping the edge of the desk. The rabbit blinked, or maybe I imagined the movement, but the feeling of being observed intensified. Every twitch, every flicker, every offbeat sound seemed intentional. I wanted to close the player, to force the episode to end, to escape. But the cursor froze. The keys didn't work. Even Alt-Tab failed. The window resisted all my commands as if it had its own will. And the whispers didn't stop. They escalated in urgency, threading together fragmented sentences that matched my own thoughts, my fears. "You shouldn't have come here, it remembers, it's waiting." It wasn't just commentary on the show, it was commentary on me, on my life, my choices, every hesitation I'd made that led me to this exact moment. I laughed nervously. It was a short, sharp sound, more tension than humor, but I couldn't stop myself. "Okay," I said aloud, my voice shaky. "This is ridiculous, it's just a file, just an animation glitch." Yet even as I said it, the screen seemed to pulse, each color bleeding a little more into the next, shadows deepening in ways they never had before. At that moment, one of the characters, my rabbit friend from childhood, tilted its head again, slow and deliberate, and mouthed something that made my stomach turn. "You're next." Not in the original voice, not in any script, just words meant for me. I tried everything, closing the player, force quitting the program, even unplugging the monitor. Nothing worked. The episode refused to end. It wasn't just animation anymore. It was a presence. A living, aware entity that had found me, that knew me, that wanted me to keep watching. And I was powerless. I couldn't look away. Not yet. Because something in the whispers promised that if I did, if I blinked, if I looked away, I would miss the next message. The next warning. The next secret that no one else in the world had ever seen. And that's when I realized it wasn't just watching me, it was waiting. I kept watching. I shouldn't have, obviously. Any sane person would have closed the laptop, deleted the forbidden episode from existence, maybe even baptized the hard drive in holy water. But I've never been known for my sanity. Curiosity is a disease, and mine was now terminal. The episode continued playing like nothing was wrong. Aside from the part where it was slowly peeling back layers of my life, like it had spent the last decade stalking me through a peephole. At first, the references were subtle, almost dismissible if you weren't actively freaking out. One of the characters wandered past a background chalkboard that had the name of my old primary school on it. Same spelling, same cracked green paint. I told myself it was a coincidence. Cartoons parody real-world schools all the time, right? Totally normal. Not creepy at all. Nope. But then another character mentioned a field trip to the lake. A lake with the exact same name as the one where I almost drowned when I was 9. That's when my stomach dropped. That memory wasn't public. It wasn't on social media. I barely talked about it. Hell, I barely thought about it. The episode flickered, the colors warping like it was breathing. A character froze mid-frame, their eyes glitching into pixelated static before slowly drifting upward, as if looking past the fourth wall, past the screen, at me. I leaned away slightly, not because I was scared, obviously. I was just stretching for spine health. Then it got worse. The main character, who had never once in any official episode broken the fourth wall, stopped walking. Their head turned slowly, unnaturally, like it was on a rusted hinge. The animation dragged by frame, janky and stuttering, until they were fully facing the audience. Facing me. And then they said my name. Not mispronounced, not a common name they might have guessed. My exact name, in the exact tone my grandmother used when she caught me doing something stupid. I froze, my breath hitched, the cursor trembled under my hand. There was no way. No way this episode could know that. No way it could. The screen glitched again. A harsh, buzzing hum blasted through my headphones and the background art shifted. It was quick, maybe 1 second, 2 at most, but I saw it. My old bedroom, not a general vibe, not a generic kid bedroom aesthetic. My room. The faded wallpaper with the little yellow stars. The crooked bookshelf. The closet door I always kept shut because the shadows inside never looked quite right. It was all there, drawn in the same soft cartoon style, but wrong, very wrong. The stars on the wallpaper were melting. The closet door was open. Something was standing inside it. And then, before my brain could catch up, the screen snapped back to the regular cartoon background. Like nothing had happened. But something had. Something was bleeding through. I tried convincing myself I was imagining things. That lack of sleep was kicking my perception in the teeth. But then the whispers started. Faint at first, beneath the music, beneath the dialogue, like someone whispering directly into the microphone from another room. I leaned closer to my screen stupidly. The whispers sharpened, layering over each other, desperate, frantic. Stop watching, stop. Turn it off. It sees you. Please. Please. I jerked back. There were multiple voices, not character voices, not distorted sound effects. Human voices. And they weren't talking to the characters. They weren't even talking to each other. They were talking to me. My heart was pounding, my skin crawled, and yet, surprise, I didn't stop the episode. Because of course I didn't. Not when it was finally giving me answers, or at least hints. That's when I remembered something. A rumor I'd heard years ago about the studio that made this show. Urban legend stuff. People claimed one of the original animators vanished halfway through production. Another supposedly went insane, locked himself in the editing room, and scratched warnings into the soundproofing foam before disappearing too. The studio denied everything, obviously. Creative burnout, they said, personal issues. Sure, personal issues like carving final cut into the walls. And then there was the other rumor, the one the fandom dismissed as a hoax. Supposedly, there was a banned test animation. A prototype episode that never aired because the studio executives said it made them feel sick, like something was wrong with the footage itself. Some fans claimed they'd seen pieces of it circulate online years ago before vanishing. The accounts that posted the clips, silence. No updates, no explanations, just abandoned profiles collecting digital dust. Back then, it was just creepy internet lore. Now it felt like a prequel. The episode on my screen flickered once more, and for a split second, barely long enough for a freeze frame, you could see a list. A scrolling list. Usernames. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. All in the same font as the in-universe credits, but jittery, unstable. And then another flicker gone. FOMO bait for anyone watching the retelling. Freeze at the exact millisecond, or miss it forever. The characters resumed moving, but now their eyes were tracking something behind the camera. Their expressions twisted into fear. True fear. Something a kid's show would never intentionally animate. I swallowed. My mouse hovered over the exit icon. That's when it happened. A notification appeared in the corner of the screen. Not from my browser. Not from my system. Not from anything I recognized. It was styled exactly like the cartoon's UI, same color palette, same rounded corners. And it said, "New message from Episode 001. The cursor froze. My breath stopped, and the notification slid open by itself. The notification blinked again, a subtle, deliberate pulse on the corner of my screen. My hand hovered over the mouse, unwilling and unwillingly drawn. I clicked it. A window popped up. Not a standard program, not a browser tab, not even a typical pop-up. Just a plain, black background with a single line of text in jagged, white letters. "Stop me before it ends your story too." I laughed, nervously. One of those laughs that sounds like a hiccup or a cough or a warning that your voice isn't really yours anymore. "Okay," I muttered to myself, forcing a smile. "Very funny, someone hacked me, or I'm hallucinating. Classic haunted file nonsense. Good one, internet. Really." But it wasn't funny. Not after the last 30 minutes of blinking, breathing, tracking cartoon characters. Not after hearing voices in whispers, low and layered, asking for help in tones no child's show could ever make. The words on the screen, they weren't typed by anyone human. They weren't on my keyboard. They had just appeared as if the episode itself, no, the file itself, knew I was watching. I tried closing the message, pressing escape, clicking the X Alt F4. Nothing worked. The line of text seemed to pulse now, almost impatiently, as if waiting for me to do something, anything. I swallowed hard. Okay, I muttered, my voice cracked. This is just like the cases online, lost media, weird corrupted episodes, people disappearing after posting about them. I remembered forums, Reddit threads, old Creepypasta entries. So many of them vanished, leaving nothing but empty accounts and warning stories. If any of you have seen something like this, comment below. I need to know I'm not alone. I said it aloud, even though the room was empty. Even though I had no camera on, even though no one could hear me. I needed some connection, a lifeline to sanity. The message blinked again, and then another line appeared beneath the first. "It learns faster than you think, don't look away." I laughed again, nervously. My hands trembled as I backed my chair slightly. "Yeah, right, sure. It learns faster than you think. Great. Fantastic. Next, it'll make my coffee and argue with me over cereal." And then the episode restarted. Not by my hand. Not with a click, not with a key press. It simply did. The familiar jingle played, but it was warped. Slower. Distorted. The colors bled into each other like wet watercolor. The rabbit character from before reappeared, but this time its eyes were hollowed out, black voids, blinking inconsistently, staring at every corner of my room. I froze. The episode was different now. I realized it wasn't repeating, it was evolving. Every movement, every scene, every tiny twitch of a pixelated eyelid felt reactive, alive, intentional. The cartoon knew what I had just read. The cartoon knew I had seen the message, and it had responded. I tried to look away, tried to close the player, tried to tell myself I was imagining this, but I couldn't, because there was a new message. A second pop-up now, almost mimicking the style of the first but smaller, almost like a whisper. "Do not delete me. Do not hide. It wants you to leave. It will find you." I pressed my palms to my face, breathing hard. Laughter bubbled out of me again, brittle, shaking like a defense mechanism my body insisted on producing. It wants me to leave, of course it does. Why wouldn't it? Classic horror trope. Absolutely normal. And yet my fear grew. Every instinct in my body screamed that this was no trope, no creepypasta cliché. Something else was at work, something that knew things it shouldn't. Names, places, memories I hadn't shared with anyone. My apartment, my childhood bedroom, my favorite mug, the way my old backpack hung crookedly on a hook in the hall. I realized I had been ignoring patterns, assuming coincidence, and that assumption had been foolish. Everything the episode had shown me, every glitch, every whispered message, every impossible detail, it was evidence. Evidence of awareness, intelligence, malice. The small notification blinked again. I clicked it before thinking. The text that appeared chilled me in a way I can't describe. There's a way to stop it, but you must watch. Every frame matters. My pulse hammered, my teeth ground. I could feel every hair on my arm standing on end. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. I wanted to delete the file and set the hard drive on fire, but I also knew I couldn't. I needed to see this through, needed to see what it would show next. And then the player shifted. The rabbit's head tilted, not at me, not at the camera, but as if scanning the room, searching. The animation stretched and warped, peeling back layers of the familiar cartoon world. Something new had emerged. A shape in the corner, vaguely humanoid, blurred, almost transparent, pulsing with intent. I held my breath. The episode had changed, and so had I. I knew, deep down, that nothing would ever be normal again. I shouldn't have kept watching. I knew it. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to shut the laptop, smash the hard drive, run into the street screaming for help. But the episode wouldn't let me stop. It had me now, tethered to it, as if my eyes were the only thing keeping it alive. And then it began to change. First flicker was subtle, almost easy to miss. The cartoon background warped. My living room, the couch, the lamp, the half-empty mug of cold coffee I'd abandoned hours ago, was there, animated in soft pastel colors at first, but quickly the colors darkened, shadows stretching unnaturally across the floor. The rabbit, my once cheerful companion, appeared in the middle of the room, staring directly at the space where I sat. Its expression wasn't happy anymore. Fear, panic. It's impossible to describe. Something about the eyes, too big, too dark, made my chest tighten. Then the other characters began to shift. The dog from the show's side plot, the tiny bear that usually laughed at nothing, even the inanimate props, they all moved with intention. They paced toward me, glancing over their shoulders as if urging me to leave, to hide, but also warning me. Something was coming, something I wasn't prepared for. The animation itself became uncanny. Limbs bent in ways the show's style had never allowed. The floors warped, textures rippled like water. Faces that had once been cheerful now twisted with silent screams, mouths moving but no sound emerged, yet I could hear them, whispering, pleading, shouting. My own name floated between the noises, dragged and warped, echoing as though my ears were underwater. And then the screen went black. Not a fade, not a glitch, black, pure, suffocating darkness. My pulse hammered. The air in the room seemed to thicken. The silence was absolute except for my own breathing, loud and uneven, and something else, soft, deliberate, a shuffle I couldn't explain. A single frame appeared, the rabbit alone, unblinking. I don't know how long I stared. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. It just looked at me. For the first time, it wasn't a cartoon character. It was something else, real, impossible, alive. Then it spoke. My name. My real name, perfectly pronounced, perfectly casual, like it had been practicing. The voice wasn't high and cheerful like the show, not distorted like the previous whispers. It was flat, cold, certain. "You shouldn't be here," it said. I tried to answer. My mouth refused. My throat felt locked. My hands shook uncontrollably. The rabbit tilted its head, blinking again, each blink slower than the last, each one a countdown. You will never leave this room the same, it continued, and soon you won't leave at all. I think my heart stopped entirely in that moment. The words were specific, detailed. They weren't generic threats. They weren't the usual horror trope of doom looming somewhere vaguely. They were personalized, targeted, as if the episode had been waiting decades for someone like me to stumble onto it, to watch it, to fail the unspoken rule of ignoring it. The background flickered back. My living room normal or almost. The objects on the shelves were slightly off. Shadows stretched in impossible directions. The door I always kept closed at night was ajar. I hadn't opened it. I knew I hadn't opened it, but it was there, watching me. The rabbit moved again, this time pointing toward it. Its finger elongated unnaturally, bending backward before snapping straight, an impossible motion that made me recoil. Its eyes, still unnervingly human now, glinting with awareness, fixed on me, pleading and commanding all at once. I forced my fingers to the mouse. I tried to close the player, shut down the computer, anything to escape. The screen resisted. Every key, every click, every command was ignored. The episode was in control. It was alive. It had learned, evolved, and adapted while I had been starring, paralyzed with a mix of fear and fascination. I tried to avert my gaze. I shouldn't have. The screen flickered. Just for an instant, and I saw something else, on the floor behind me. My apartment reflected in the episode now, warped, corrupted, the rabbit's shadow stretching across the real carpet. I turned too slowly. Something shifted in the corner, not fully formed, just a shadow, just enough to convince my rational brain it had moved while I wasn't looking. The whispers returned, layered over the familiar jingle, over the warped sounds of animation. They weren't frantic this time. They were methodical, almost patient. You can't stop it. You can't leave. You will see everything. Then the rabbit leaned forward, closer than the screen should allow, and whispered, perfectly clear, without any distortion. Some things are meant to be watched. Others are meant to follow. I could feel it behind me. I could feel it learning, waiting, and I knew with a certainty that made my chest ache and my stomach twist that I had crossed a line, that nothing would be the same. The screen flickered one final time. Colors returned to their original brightness. The characters froze in mid-motion like a paused frame, smiling innocently, just like the cartoon I had loved as a child. But the air in the room had changed. Heavy, watching, waiting. And in the corner, barely perceptible unless you knew to look, something crouched, something patient, something not animated. The episode had ended, but the presence had not. I couldn't look away, and I knew without a doubt that it hadn't left. The episode ended. At least it appeared to have ended. The screen went black. The cheerful jingle that had haunted me since childhood was gone. My computer was silent, and for a brief, blissful moment I thought I had survived. I was wrong. That night shadows began moving in the corners of my apartment. Nothing fully formed, nothing that could be captured in a photograph, but unmistakable. Shapes stretched and flickered across the walls, bending like animated cell frames, warping against the logic of reality. The rabbit appeared, sometimes in reflection, sometimes in peripheral vision, always observing, always waiting. I could hear faint whispers beneath the hum of my electronics, fragments of the same words from the episode. It sees you, you cannot leave. The next morning I woke to find the mug from my desk moved, tipped just slightly, as though some unseen hand had rearranged it while I slept. My childhood toys, ones I hadn't touched or thought about in years, were scattered across the floor. My memory told me I hadn't moved them. My mind argued that they shouldn't have moved. My eyes told me otherwise. By the third night the audio started. Subtle at first, tiny creaks, a piano note out of tune, the soft static of old cartoon television, but it grew. A distorted version of the opening theme played backwards, echoed through my room. Whispers swirled beneath it, layering over themselves, repeating sentences I hadn't remembered the episode saying. Finish the story, don't look away, it will follow. And then I noticed something worse. The episode itself had returned. Not as a memory, not as a dream, but on my devices. Every device. Laptop, phone, tablet. Deleted files reappeared overnight, identical to the one I had cursed myself with downloading. No matter how many times I threw it into the trash, no matter how often I formatted drives, it always returned, waiting, patient, persistent. I opened it once just to see. The animation was different, not just evolved but personalized. Scenes of my apartment, my childhood bedroom, my high school hallways, drawn with the same warped realism that had terrified me before. The rabbit's gaze followed me, calculating, assessing. And a new symbol appeared, faint but unmistakable, a looping spiral hidden in the corner of every frame. I froze. I had seen it once before in a split-second flash, but it had been unremarkable until now. The spiral appeared on my walls in reflections, faintly scratched into furniture I had never touched. It was everywhere, a sign I couldn't ignore. I realized then the full, horrifying truth. The episode hadn't just shown me something. It had followed me. It had adapted, evolved, made a space for itself inside my life. And worse, it wasn't finished. It wanted an ending. My stomach churned as the existential weight of it settled. The cartoon, the file, the presence, whatever it had become, it wasn't content to exist on a screen. It wanted to finish its arc. And I was the protagonist. The narrative was still running, and if I didn't play along, I couldn't imagine what it might do to correct the story. Every night became a test. The shadows, the whispers, the subtle distortions, they weren't random. They were cues, prompts. The spiral reminded me, every time I noticed it, that there was a structure to all this. Rules I didn't understand, but rules that mattered. I tried to rationalize. Perhaps it was malware. Perhaps it was my mind breaking. Perhaps it was just clever coding preying on my nostalgia. But the spiral, the tracking, the adaptive animation, it didn't make sense in any rational context. And every time I tried to warn someone, even online, my words came out jumbled, incomplete, or erased entirely. I thought about the audience. People who chase creepypastas, lost media-haunted files. I thought about sharing, warning, preventing the next person from falling into the loop I was trapped in. But even then, doubt gnawed at me. Could I describe it accurately? Could anyone believe it? Or would the story itself, the file, intercept, evolve, and continue without me, leaving me as nothing more than a note in its margins? The spiral appears everywhere now. On the screen, on the walls, in reflections, on objects I touch. It is patient, waiting, growing. Every day the episode adapts to me more completely. The realization is unbearable, the story is alive, and the story wants a conclusion, and I am the only one who can provide it. I don't know how much longer I can endure this, how long I can resist. Every instinct tells me to shut everything down, to flee, to erase the spiral from my sight. But the file, it wouldn't let me. It's always there, always watching, always ready to continue the narrative without me if I falter. And so I wait, I watch, I write. I document because if I don't, there may be no evidence left at all. If anyone else has seen this file or anything like it, you need to know. You are not alone. And if you see the spiral, no matter how faint, it's already too late. The story has begun, and it doesn't end when the episode does. If you've made it this far, you need to listen carefully. This isn't like the other stories I've told. This isn't entertainment. This isn't a campfire tale or a late-night creepypasta binge. This is the part where you stop, really stop, and ask yourself why you're still here. Because if you're still listening, still watching, still thinking about that episode, it may already be paying attention. I'm only telling you this because no one warned me. No one said to turn back or look away, and I should have. I should have slammed my laptop shut the moment that first glitch appeared, the moment those characters looked at me, but I didn't. Curiosity, nostalgia, boredom, whatever it was, it dragged me in. And now I can't leave. Not fully. Not ever. So I'm warning you, do not search for this episode. Don't try to find it. Don't dig through those lost media forums or click on archive links claiming to have a rare banned file. Don't chase rumors about corrupted cartoon episodes or symbols hidden in single frames. Because some of them aren't rumors. Some of them are invitations. And believe me, this thing wants to be found. It spreads through attention, through curiosity, through people just like you who think they're smarter than a file or braver than a cartoon or immune to a story. You're not. I was. The others weren't. And here's the part I hate saying. Some of you have already seen it. Not the full thing. No one ever sees it all at once. That's not how it works. But if you've noticed the spiral somewhere recently, if you've seen a thumbnail that didn't look quite right, or if you've heard a bit of distorted audio late at night that you chalked up to your imagination, well, you'll know tonight. I wish I could tell you how to stop it. I wish I could claim I found a loophole, a rule, a weakness. But every time I get close to understanding its pattern, it shifts. Every time I try to shut it out, it finds another screen, another device, another surface to seep into. That spiral isn't just a symbol. It's a path, a tunnel, a direction. And once you've seen it, the story starts writing itself around you. So this is all I can offer. Don't look for it. Don't try to prove me wrong. Don't go hunting for the file, no matter what you think you'll find. And if you ever see a thumbnail of an old cartoon episode, bright colors, familiar characters, maybe even a nostalgic title, but something about it feels off. If the smile looks a little too wide, or the eyes are shaded a little too dark, or the background seems to lean toward you, don't click it. That's not a video. It's a door. And once you open it, you don't get to choose what comes through.